Okay, well, welcome everybody to Elizabeth Kelly's regular seminars. As you can tell, I'm not Elizabeth Kelly. Elizabeth fell ill today and she asked me to pinch hit this evening. So my name is Christian Szpilfogel and I have a company called Aliferous, which does mostly various forms of real estate investing and redevelopment and development work here in Eastern Ontario. And I have two wonderful guests with me tonight. The first, before we go to the guests, I guess I got to go through a little hygiene stuff. When we talk today, for those of you who are not familiar with Zoom, you probably want to take a look to see how to use chat. There is a little chat button at the bottom of your window where you can just click on that and you can chat and interact with some of the other folks that are on the webinar tonight. And then the way we're going to manage questions, because it's going to be difficult for me to try and follow the chat at the same time that we're running our webinar this evening. So the best thing to do is to put things in the Q&A using the Q&A box, and I will read those questions. We'll save the questions till a little later in the webinar. But we will get a chance, probably a good 20 minutes or so, for your questions. So the agenda for this evening is we're going to have three in reality, developers, people that are specializing in land development, construction, etc. And this is a great opportunity to learn about another form of investing, other than just say single family homes or multifamily residential or other forms of commercial. Land development is a really interesting field. I do it to some degree, but not necessarily to the same extent as some of our panelists might. So that we will take about an hour, and then we'll do about 20 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll intend to wrap up at the 8:30 mark. Okay, and as always, Elizabeth has a little giveaway at the end. So stay tuned, and those that are at the end will have a chance to win the giveaway. Okay, so me, I'll just give you a very quick background. I've been investing in real estate since about 2005. I do mostly investments in commercial properties. That's multifamily, which is about 70% of our holdings, but we do light industrial, office, retail, etc. And we usually do development, new builds or redevelopment work in our portfolio. Primarily, we invest in Eastern Ontario and also in the Halifax region. Now, the more interesting people are our guests tonight. The first is Darcy Marler, who's been on this webinar before. And we were just reminiscing earlier that Darcy and I did this precisely a year ago on a very similar topic. So Darcy has been in real estate for quite a long time, since he was a teenager, it turns out. He started investing at that time, or introduced to it, and continues to do so. He's been a full-time real estate investor since 2001, has held over 90 properties and 240 doors worth quite a chunk of change, which was awesome. Trust me, you get a lot of hard knocks and scars to get to that point. So Darcy's going to be a great guy on this topic. He's got a broad set of skills, and I know, Darcy, you also have a course on land development that you do, and you do coach people in the form of land development, which is awesome. Our next guests are Jake and Paula, or Jake Tayler and Paula McFarlane, the power couple in London, Ontario, that have been going hardcore in terms of real estate. They have an interesting background in that they started in frontline services, first responder services, and I think was a key instigation to understand that life is precious and you have to grasp it, right away. And so they made the transition to becoming full-time real estate investors fairly recently, but they've been investing prior to that, prior to going full-time. And they are now doing work such as developing new housing. And they've completed a number of projects on that front. So I'm very happy to welcome both Jake, Paula, and Darcy for what's going to be a really interesting discussion this evening. So I'm just going to drop that for now, the share. Okay, so that I can see everybody. And we'll start talking a little bit about land development. But one of the things that I'd like to understand is how you guys got started in the land development side of things. And I'll start with Darcy on this, and then we'll come back to Paula and Jake, because I think it's really, people find it really interesting to understand, well, how did you come across this and why did you think to do it? And how did you get this start? Because often people start from somewhere else. So Darcy, you want to give me your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was doing, like 90 to 95% of all real estate education is about flips and rentals. So that's kind of where we all started. I started like by 2001. And then after doing that for about 16, 17 years, I got deeply, deeply depressed. I had all the success, but I really just hated it. I've had close to 1,000 tenants, and I can't say that I enjoyed any of that journey. So I've actually sold all my rentals. I have no rentals left. And then on the kind of the project side, the flips and the condo conversions, I was the on-site supervisor guy, and that doesn't fit my personality at all. Like I got tired of going to Rona twice a day for 17 years. So I just actually sat there with a spreadsheet. So this is all the things I don't want to do. And then there's columns for each of the actual spreadsheets, multifamily, rent to own, whatever, all the way down. And if I didn't want to do it, I put an X. If I wanted to do it, I put a big check mark. And it really became really, really graphically clear quickly that this is kind of what I should be doing. So I got back into, I did a bunch of land development over the years, but I got back into it as kind of one of the main things that I do now.
So you went from tenants talking back to you to the city talking back to you.
Yeah, and one of the things I teach in the courses is pick the right municipality, because it can make a huge difference in this country. So so it's so
100%, Darcy. I couldn't agree more.
Psychological depression thing that got me going. So.
That's interesting, actually. I love hearing these stories because they're never what you think. So
well, and I was on, I was a member of RAIN, so I was on the RAIN stage continually accepting awards, Renovator of the Year and Multifamily Player of the Year. Like I was a big guy, right? And then I don't like this, people. So it's like, what's on Facebook isn't necessarily what's going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. And Paula, Jake, tell me your story.
First, I just want to say, like, I found that really refreshing to hear, because we were kind of in the same boat. Like we don't enjoy being landlords. That's just not our cup of tea.
Yeah, we kind of over the last couple of years, we've stumbled upon a couple properties that we've held, and but we're in the same boat. It also, being new, it's refreshing to hear you say pick the right municipality, because we're in a few municipalities, and we definitely find some easier to work with than others. So being new, that's very refreshing. But I'll let Paula kind of answer the
yeah, and I will apologize. Both of us are like have a little bit of a cough, so it's kind of annoying. We'll be taking frequent drinks and probably coughing frequently. But I really got my start in like being involved in land development from a very young age. My dad actually developed like kind of by accident. We owned like a big chunk of land, basically like the whole end of one street. My dad developed it into lots, sold them off. He'd buy, like a cottage on a double lot, sever it, renovate the cottage, sell it, build on the lot, just little things like that. So our very first project that we did as a business was a development project.
small one.
Just because that's what I was familiar with. So
Yeah,
we basically tried doing exactly that, buying a house on a double lot, fixing the house and selling the lot. So that was our first like kind of foray into development, and we enjoyed it. I mean, it was a stressful process, and we also got hit with COVID in the middle of it. So our 6-month severance ended up being 14 months or something by the time it was done. But
yeah, for me it was similar to what Darcy said. We got our kind of our feet wet doing the flips and, you know, a handful of rental properties. We did the duplex conversion type things. And I don't want to say it was boring, but it just wasn't, we always wanted to create a business, right? And I didn't see a scalable business I'm not saying you can't, but I didn't see a scalable business for us in the fix and flip model. And, you know, there's lots of information on social media. We became friends with people in the real estate community and just seeing what they're doing. And I was like, yes, this is more interesting to me. This is more exciting to me. And that's kind of how we pivoted towards that. And then when we started out, we always wanted to get into new construction homes.
We built our first house, like our first house together. We built it. We self-contracted it. Had no clue what we were doing. And we both really enjoyed the process. So by the time it was done, we were like, I kind of want to do that again. So we ended up selling it, buying land, and we're going to do it again. And then ran into some issues with Conservation Authority. And we, at the time, excuse me, were like, I guess, too afraid to pursue it. If we had come across that now, we would have totally pursued it. But yeah, so that we were like, we want to do this again, but we just didn't really understand how to do it at scale. So it took some time for us to be involved in the real estate world before we learned how to raise capital, just find deals, like all that stuff that we needed. So
now the key thing around any learning topic is learning and growth. And you know, you can get to a certain point and then start to, you know, continue to do the same thing over and over again. You know, Darcy, you've been at this quite a long time. Do you continue to grow the envelope of your learning? Is that part of what excites you in this, or are you more at the level now where you say, I just have a great well-oiled machine and I just keep doing it over and over again?
No, that was part of my problem too. I have a very short attention span. That's why I was flips and rentals and let's do this. Oh, you know, shiny trinket, what's over there? So yeah, no, what I've learned the power of focus in the last few years. But yeah, I've done different real estate projects in 9 municipalities across Alberta. So what's there to grow for me? So now I'm expanding and I'm looking to do buy some land in Texas, in Houston, or in Florida, and actually start to do stuff down there. So that's kind of my growth pattern personally, just expanding a field. So.
Yeah, I think that's really important to know who you are, and it also points to the fact that it's always a continuous learning process. We're always growing, we're learning more, and by learning more, we can do bigger and better things. And it's not that we just sit and rest on our laurels. I mean, at some point, people can choose to do that. But every one of us has gone through personal growth all the way through here, and there's always a little bit of excitement, a little bit of anxiety, right? And I'm guessing, Darcy, do you still get butterflies when you get onto some new projects that you haven't done before?
My thing was, I love the hunt. I love the beginning part, right? So I was always actually sad when I got the keys to the place. Everybody else gets excited, but now, now I had to actually be the landlord, or I got to, you know, sit there every day and go to Rona, right? So I always loved the upfront part. So I'm kind of a little backwards that way. But
well, no, maybe you're just the kind of person who you still get that little bit of anxiousness, but you thrive on it.
I love the hunt. I really love the hunt, finding the opportunities, finding the deals, putting the team together, figuring out. I love being creative. So, you know, with the flips, what am I going to do with this old house? Land development, you know, kind of nerdy, but where are the roads going to go? Where's the water going to run when it rains, and those kind of things. So I love that part of it. That's the butterfly.
And what about you, Jake and Paula? I mean, I know you've been at this now a few years, and you're still on a growth curve. You've done more than most people will ever dream of doing, right? But still, you're on a growth curve, and it's a huge curve there. What excites you about it? How do you relish the new adventure? Do you get anxiety about new projects? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, again, I'm very similar to Darcy. I love the hunt, and it's basically once you hunt it down and you figure out what you're gonna do with it, the in between till it's done is not super exciting to me. I don't want to say lose interest, but you know, once that's going on, I kind of jump to the next thing. Sorry, I can't remember the rest of the question.
There you
go. I just want to say that now.
So you guys are still growing, you're still learning.
Yeah,
you love the learning process, I'm guessing.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we are big self-development. We always have a element of self-development in our lives. We also have a coach and consulting for our business and our development side of things. So yeah, there's tons to learn. We're relatively new. Every new experience, every new thing we learn is super exciting for me.
And we do try, like, we know that things are hard and we do run across hard things all the time, but we try to frame it in a way like this is hard. And once we get over it, it's just an opportunity for us to learn and grow. So basically every challenge is only going to make us better. And, you know, once we get through it kind of thing. So it's just had to constantly remind ourselves, because I mean, you hit no's and roadblocks all the time in this field. So, you know, if you stopped every time someone said no, you wouldn't get very far. You kind of just have to keep pushing, or, you know, come up with a different strategy and, you know, make changes and adapt. And so you're definitely, I don't think we've ever grown so much as we have in the last 3 years.
No,
Like
even personally.
yeah,
right?
even, yeah, just our personal lives, like mindset, you know, everyone talks about mindset, but it really is, you know, once you kind of like overcome the ability to, I guess, like, you know, shatter your glass ceiling, you really can go, there's unlimited potential. You can just, you know, just keep going, but it takes, you know, a little bit of work to get over that fear and to know that you are capable of doing it. So.
Absolutely, very well said. Now, on a related note, and the one thing that I notice is that your spouses and your business partners, right? And my wife is my business partner as well, and we work equally hard on the business. But there's always a bit of a dynamic there, and certainly in the case of my wife and I, we're complementary skill sets. And to be fair, she's actually more of a risk taker than I am. So I'm curious, you know, when we take a look at the dynamics between you guys, how do you complement each other?
That was something we had to figure out as we grew, kind of setting each other's roles, clearly define those roles. And there's certain things that, you know, I may be the major contributor on, but we always go back and forth on them. Like, say, like if we're analyzing a deal, I'm generally the one that finds them that we'll analyze and look at things together.
Yeah, I feel like he would take more risks than me.
Yeah, that's true.
But we are very similar. Like, we come from very similar careers. You know, we actually worked together then too. He hates when I tell that story, so I always have to get it.
Every
in there.
webinar ever or podcast, that's also something he has to say. So,
but because people always ask us, like, how do you work together? But we do. But I feel like, yeah, like Jake is definitely the bigger risk taker, where I kind of want to know, like, Jake will just go for it, where I want to know, like, the steps involved, and, you know, how are we gonna do this? How are we gonna do this? How are we gonna do this?
Yeah.
I try to, like, slow him down a little bit, not stop him by any means, but
yeah, she's
just
definitely
making sure we're looking at the big picture.
Yeah, she's
basically.
definitely a parrot on my shoulder too, when times of need, to kind of be like, hey, look, you know what I mean? But no, we complement each other very well. And in our business, we both have our roles. There's things that she does that I could never do. And then there's things that I do that she could do, but she just helps me.
So generally, it's, you know, I'm a strong advocate that it's important to have people around you that you can trust, that are part of your decision process, and partnerships with people that you do fundamentally trust can be very beneficial. And certainly with spouses, it's sort of the ultimate in trust. Now, turning to you, Darcy, I'm not sure, you know, in your operation, are you more of a lone wolf, or do you have a close set of advisors that you work with?
No, that was one of my main drawbacks. I was a lone wolf guy. So my coming on webinars is basically just a big study of what you shouldn't do, is how I treat this. Basically it's yeah, so I had no focus. I was always lone wolf guy. I'm like, Jake, that's, you know, the kids used to bug me that I never saw a property I didn't like, right? So I was just buying everything. So yeah, and we always talk in this real estate education world about joint venture partners. Got to find money, got to get a joint venture partner. And I think we'd be all better off to get an operational partner, whether that's your spouse or not, but find someone who, you know, like those Property Brothers on TV, you know, the cute twins, you know, one's more design and sales guy, the other's on-site guy. So find somebody that's your yin to your yang, that really helps you out and is strong where you're weak.
Yeah, Yeah, I think that works well. So Darcy, just continuing on with you, what is it that you really love about land development when you really get down to it? Aside from the new adventures and the learning, is there something about land development specifically that really excites you?
I'm a guy that likes to be creative, as I said, but I like a project, right? I like a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that's another reason why I probably didn't gravitate to rentals that well. It just kind of never ends. I like to. Most people I find out don't have the ability to really picture stuff. That's why you have to have a sales house or show home to kind of show people this is what it's going to like. I don't. I can look at a picture, the blueprint. I can close my eyes and I can drive down the street. Oh, there's a house. Get out of the car. I can walk. Most people don't do that, but I love that. Right? I love to be able to kind of visualize in my head and then see that vision come to life. I really get a kick out of that. So.
And do you do, so the kinds of land development, do you do upzoning work as well?
Yeah, and I think maybe we should clarify that for the audience too. I like land development isn't just big boys on the outskirts of town, with 300 acres doing hundreds of lots, right? There's different micro strategies that, upzoning, like you said, where you're just changing zoning and density, not doing anything. Maybe you can do a little bit more paperwork. So maybe you can do tear down the house and actually have a blueprint of the new house ready to go. So it's kind of shovel ready for a builder. You can do as Jake and Paula said before, kind of where you buy a larger property and sever off kind of the excess. You've got land assembly where you can kind of buy 2 or 3 older houses side by side, tear them down, get that ready for a builder. So, there's different options available in this land development world. And so I call them micro strategies, but so it is accessible by, small and medium sized investors for sure. You don't have to sit there and say, oh, tonight's topic, they're just talking about, developing 5 acres. I don't have the money to do that, and kind of tune out. There's all kinds of opportunities in this world that everybody can get into.
Yeah, it could be really simple stuff, like Jake and Paula mentioned earlier, just doing some simple severances. So we buy a house with an extra wide lot and sever the lot. That's a form of land development right there, right? And so if you've done one of those, congratulations, you're already a land developer. So, and it can go to really big stuff like official plan amendments and all the way up to that, which can take years. So, and everything in between. So what about you guys, Jake and Paula, right? In terms of, you're doing mostly new builds, right? I believe. So what is it about new builds specifically that excites you? Or is that just, your current thing and there's something else that you want to do?
Yeah, we have a handful of those happening this year. It's one part of our business. The other part would be like smaller development, like you guys mentioned. But the thing I like about is the blank canvas. The possibilities are endless, and it's kind of a creative outlet for us, which I don't think I ever had before in my life. So this is like a creative outlet. You can take the blank canvas and just build not whatever you want, but within the zoning bylaws and stuff, whatever you want. You can make it look like how you want, and it's just it's super exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting to kind of create something out of nothing. Especially like our very first one was, we had a house on 2 acres and the house was justified to one side, and we severed it. And our intent was to build on next door, but COVID and everything, and we were new and scared. And so we ended up just selling the land. We did well, but now when we drive by and you see this, someone built this beautiful house there and you're like, we created that, like that didn't exist before. We didn't build it, but we made that possible that they could build, their dream house there. So it's just cool to see. I don't know, you get to, again, like Darcy said, like you get to see something start to finish, you can visualize it, you know what you want, and then you just get to see it come to life. And yeah, it's like for us, like we are generally building things that aren't necessarily, like they're not cookie cutter. And we're all building spec right now. So we'll build it, how we want to build it and then put it on the market. So it's fun for us. Like we get to see it start to finish. We get, I get to choose, what's going in there. Well, actually, I don't choose it. We hire designers too, because we don't really have time to, pick and choose what's going inside. But I don't know, it's just fun.
Yeah.
We both really enjoy it. So
I think another really exciting thing for me is, you take a look at a property, something's for sale or something you're looking at on a map. You check the zoning, you see what's available, what's allowed, and you can kind of think to yourself and try to figure out what's the best use of this land. And I find that to be super exciting.
Interesting.
The other cool thing too is 10 years later, you can drive by and you're now finished development. You say that exists on this planet because of me. And that's a
yeah,
pretty-
it's
Sure.
cool.
Yeah. Show your kids, show
Yeah.
everyone. Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah. So Darcy, you have a great program, and you brought it up already in terms of the different micro strategies in land development. And, and that's the thing, right? When we talk about real estate investing in general, there's different asset classes, there's different ways of doing things. There really isn't, there's some established patterns, but every one of these has other micro strategies associated with it. So I think it would be helpful for our audience if maybe you could take a few minutes and maybe describe some of the major micro strategies within land development, and kind of where you take it to from a process perspective, in terms of level of completion, etc. So I think that would be helpful for people, because I think for a lot of people, we've been talking about land development as this nebulous, broad thing.
So that actually brings up another, I'll get to that in a sec. That brings up another point, is that when you do a flip or you do a condo conversion, you have to finish the project before it's worth anything. You can't sell a partially finished flip and expect to get huge dollars for it. What's great about these micro strategies is that you can just move the needle, right? You can just do part of it and then sell it off to somebody else. So you can just focus on one specific piece. So for example, the upzoning strategy, where you're just changing zoning and density. So the profit to you is that, you've bought a piece of land that's just zoned for single family, and then you've taken it through City Hall to make it multifamily or whatever's allowed, right? So now you can sell it to a builder because it has more value. The difference between what we typically think of, because most of us come to everything through a mindset of landlords or flippers, is that the property is the asset, the building is the asset. In this case, the land is the asset. So how do you move the needle and just take it to the next space so somebody else can buy it and somebody else can take the next little bit? So you move the needle, or as I say, you get on and off the escalator at different pieces. So most at the base is you're just changing zoning and density. The next piece would be, okay, so let's say you've got a single family home on a 1930s house on a 50-foot lot. You can just change the zoning and density and maybe get it rezoned so that now you can put a fourplex there, for example. Or the next step was you can maybe knock down the house, sever the land in two. One of the lots will already be serviced because the old house was there. Now you can service the lot, sell that to a builder, see? So you can just kind of move the needle. You can also, as I said, put 2 or 3 lots side by side together. So that's land assembly. And you can clear all the lots, get everything serviced, and then a builder could maybe build side by side townhouses or an apartment building, so kind of a small multifamily. The next thing is, if you wanted to, now you can actually be the builder too, right? So again, you don't have to do any of it. You can do little pieces of it. You can do the whole project. It's really good. And then, like you said, with the severing the larger lot, you sever the lot, you sell that, you make a profit, you can walk away, or you can maybe develop, that old house that was there. Now you can maybe do some development there. Or for those of you that are kind of in the rental space and you're finding it hard to find stuff that cash flows, you can take the profits from the excess land, pay down the mortgage of the existing building, and now you've got a much better cash flowing property. So these micro strategies really allow lots of really creativity and different ways that you can get out. So, I don't really have time, for example, to worry about all this. So maybe I will focus just on that upzoning strategy, because, to be honest, your team, your engineer, your planner is going to do most of the actual back and forth with the city. So you can continue living your life while they're doing that. And that's a really, really great way to reduce risk as well, right? Because you can just, one of the things about investing in Alberta, it's up and down and up and down, right? So one of the things I've learned is get in and out quick. So that's another reason why I don't want to do rentals or 7 or 8 year joint venture partnership, right? What can I do that's only going to take 6 months? So, so again, you can really pick your strategy and base it to your personality and your lifestyle and who and what you are and what you like and what your why is. So I just love the flexibility that this whole world gives you.
So I think you highlighted something that was important there too, is that land development isn't necessarily just a specific focus or profession. It can also be a piece of other strategies or investment models that you're doing. So, for example, you gave an example, and Jake and Paula gave a similar example earlier, which is you might buy an extra wide lot that could be severed, right? And your main project might actually be to do a flip or a BRRRR or some sort of repositioning of the main building. But you're going to be taking the land and severing it and use that as part of your working capital to fund the rest of your project. Well, now you've combined some land development in the context of a broader plan that you have. And so it's a good skill to acquire. And I think, the other, yeah, exactly. And so the other thing that you were talking about there, Darcy, which is great, which is, each of these micro strategies is very much a progression. So you're kind of moving the needle from land in its current entitlements to land with its new entitlements. And, for example, one of our local land developers, what she likes doing is taking a piece of land, effectively doing assembly. So pulling together a few pieces or few parcels together, and that might be zoned for lower density. And then she changes it to a higher density zoning. And the process to do that, I think, is fairly consistent, across the country, but it's usually requires you to actually put the plans in place for what's going to be built in order for council to approve the new changes in that particular zoning. And then you've got this architect's plan, you've got this upzoning package, you've got your building permits, and then you can sell that to an actual developer. So all you did was the paper exercise to get to that specific point. And that can be quite rewarding for sure. So, Jake, sorry, go ahead, Darcy.
I was just going to say, and that really, doing a flip takes a lot of work. Like it's very time consuming, right? So the other great thing about these micro strategies is that they typically pay better than the average flip, and the time that you're investing is much less. So it can really end up with a really great return on time, which we don't necessarily always talk about in the real estate world here. So return on time can be really big on these types.
Excellent. Paula, Jake, do you have anything to
add? We're coming to Alberta because everything takes so long here. Like we're in London, and I mean, London has had a bad reputation for kind of being like anti-development, I guess. I don't know. They're just, they are really challenging. But like what you said about choosing municipalities, that's
big.
That, that's a big thing for sure. So like we've kind of learned that the hard way, and we're transitioning out of London just because of the headaches. And we know like what we're trying to do should be approved and should be, it's like, it's for the better of the city, the province. Like we're not doing anything crazy, like it should happen, but they still put up roadblocks and try to stop you from doing it. So yeah, our strategy now is just get out of London. We'll go find somewhere that will let us do that kind of stuff, because it's just one less headache if we can go somewhere that allows it. So
I was going to say, I was going to just to pick up on that a little bit, right? Maybe this is where you were going, Darcy, is that, when there's opposition, right? There's opposition come from a variety of different sources. Your opposition could be because the city has an official plan and sub-plans for particular districts, and they want certain things to grow in certain places, and they want other things not necessarily go. Other forms of pushback might be from NIMBYism, if you will, or bananaism, right? As Darcy coined last year, which I still love. So, Paula, coming back to some of the resistance that you've seen, and then Darcy, you can kind of tell me your thoughts in terms of what you've seen in your history, is how much of that resistance is coming from, say, NIMBYism versus maybe misalignment with the official plan versus just a council that doesn't even listen to its own official plan?
You want me to field that one?
yeah, go ahead.
I would say the council doesn't listen to its own official plan, would be my
And
opinion on it.
NIMBYs too.
And NIMBYs too. But NIMBYs you're always going to have, right?
Like
you're no matter what you're trying to do, I think that's always going to be a thing. But yeah, some of the finer details come down to they're not really following their official plan.
Like the city of London says they want inwards and upwards, yet they're denying, a double lot land severance that should be allowed. Like just little things like that. And like when we were at our committee of adjustments, it sounded like they would have approved it for us if it wasn't for profit. It was like, are you going to live there? Are you going to be renting it? Are you going to be like, what are you building there? Not relevant to whether or not is this land severable or not. Like it was more about.
Yeah, it was, the questions they were asking were irrelevant. There was the frontage for the parcel we were trying to sever. There was other parcels on that street with the same frontage. But yeah, it is what it is. It was not a pleasant experience. But yeah.
And then talk about time too. So like it took 11 months before we could get in front of the committee of adjustment. So like we've been holding on to this for 11 months and then they say no. So it's like at this point, it's been 11 months. Do we keep pushing or do we just like sell it as one parcel? Like, because the house did need to be fixed up as well, which we've done.
But to appeal, it would be another year-ish to kind of get to that point. So it's like, what do you do, right? So
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough when you're trying to create more housing. You're trying to do the right thing, and there's pushback, but it is what it is, I guess.
Darcy, do you have any observations in your history in terms of, whether it gets easier if you're trying to align with the official plan or not, or some of the dynamics that you see between NIMBYism, council, the official plan, etc.?
Couple of things. So we've all heard of horror stories with land development. That's why I don't want to get into it. But really, if you're having trouble, it's really just because you're in a bad municipality, right? So that could be the city council, that could be the NIMBY crowd. I'm actually kind of optimistic though for the first time in forever, because provincial governments, most basically in Ontario and BC, they're actually, Ontario came out with a 50-point plan here in February at a provincial level to say, we got to do this better, because there's a lot of huge demand and there's a lot of press these days on the housing crisis, right? So there's a lot of pressure from the federal and the provincial government to kind of make something work. So Ontario came up with this 50-point plan of here's how we can do it better. And one of the points was, bypass the part where the NIMBYs can bitch, right? Which would be a huge win. BC's gone another way, and they're saying they want to, their goal is to make the process uniform around the province so that you don't get these individual differences between counties and cities. And then the other thing, they want to take a lot of that out of the hands of the local municipalities. So you bypass kind of all that. And, because to a large degree, what happens is the NIMBY crowd bitches, the politician wants to get elected. So he just says, okay. And so then we end up with urban sprawl where we just kind of push the ball down the road. A lot of that is if you can kind of give the local councillor kind of an out, well, it's not me, it's the provincial government, then at least I think you'll see a lot. So, so for the first time forever, I'm kind of more optimistic than I've ever been before. So.
No, absolutely. That's fantastic. In my own personal experience, I find that, and maybe I'm just dealing with a good city, right? So because I'm doing most of the development in the Ottawa area and surrounding towns, and they're generally in favor of supporting their official plan. And so usually the issue is if you are aligned with the official plan, even if you get some pushback locally, once you move up to the provincial level, and in Ontario, there's the Ontario Lands Tribunal, now it used to be called LPAT. And so you can still get the approval of that level. It just means it's a little bit of a harder fight. But if you're within the realm of the official plan, generally I've found the city to be quite supportive of what you're doing, and will back you up even in the face of NIMBYism. Now, the other thing that I've found is managing the NIMBYism, right? So there are sort of tricks, if you will, right, or just good practices in terms of managing opposition, etc. Darcy, you've got a long storied career in land development. Are there any tricks of the trade, if you will, or techniques that you've used to help manage NIMBYism?
Be proactive. So, like I said, as landlords and flippers, we tend to just want to buy property right away, right? So I always counsel, lift yourself up. And the first thing you should be doing is doing kind of an investigation and educate yourself of which which municipalities are better. You know, I give the example of Vancouver Island. You've got Victoria, which is awful and takes 1.5 to 2 years to get anything done. An hour outside of that is Langford, which takes 2 months. Go up the road a little bit, Parksville and Qualicum are like 6 months, 4 to 6 months. Nanaimo is 8 months, you know, Souk and East Souk are a year and a half. So literally just, you know, 50 miles down the road, or even literally right across a highway, you can have major differences. So kind of figure out. I own 4 fourplexes in a real small village here in Alberta, and city hall was, you know, double wide trailer, and I walked in and I had a lot, and I said, what's the actual what's the process of getting something built here? And the lady behind the desk says, well, just kind of write down what you want on a sheet of paper and have a drawing. Doesn't even have to be a blueprint. Marv, the town councilor, and I will talk about it over lunch. So that was, you know, so you can, versus, you know, Toronto, which has 11 pages of application notes, and then you've got to go through 3 committees, and then City Hall is their councilors, however many dozens of councilors there are. So, you know, pick your spot wisely, I guess is the best way to go about it. Avoid the problem in the first place, I guess.
Yeah, and I like what you said there in terms of, you know, what you were kind of implying is there's a benefit to relationships as well. Yeah. So having a relationship with key people who can make a difference, that doesn't just have to be councillors. It could be the urban planner that you're dealing with in the city, that they have a respect for what you do, and they will help to you know, make things work a little bit easier in terms of where it's going. So that's certainly a good thing to do.
I've found in general, a city in general is either pro-development or anti-development. If the city's anti-development, you're screwed. If the city's pro-development, then individual communities within that individual neighborhoods might be pro or anti. So then you can, again, pick the ones that are better, because you know city council's more or less got your back. So I find
perfect. That's a great tip. Absolutely. So Jake and Paula, I'm gonna ask you to share one of your projects just to get people a little bit excited about some stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I'll get Paula to switch it over here. She made the slide here.
It's not like the most, like, it's not the greatest slideshow I've ever made, but I just want to present. There we go.
Oh, it's a nice car though. Oh,
yeah, I know. We always get a
a
rendering of a Porsche out front. I think we have a Bentley in one too. So we are now stepping outside of London to do projects. So Stratford's 45 minutes from London. We're in Park Hill. And it's just like, when you talk about dealing with different municipalities, the city there was like basically helping us like push our permit process through so that we could tear this house down faster. Like, cause they were trying to help us, which was like so foreign to us. Like, what do you mean? What do they want? Why are they trying to help us?
Yeah,
it was really nice. Like, it's really refreshing.
Yeah. Same with That was a different town, but even Stratford, we have another project that's a big renovation, and just talking to the plans examiner, and he's helped me out, and our plans weren't even that detailed.
No, we just said we got the permits today. It was for it's a 9 unit that we're renovating. And I was like, if this was London, we wouldn't see these for like another 6 months.
The things they asked back, it's like, oh, what's the measurement from the center of the road to the, like, just crazy. Anyways, I'll let Paula share this.
Okay, so this is one that we're doing. It's infill. We didn't develop this land. We just bought this one. The neighbors ended up severing on either side of them. They had a big lot, and we just bought this one. So this is like our first build as Tartan Builders, which is the warranty licensing body in Ontario, which is a whole other can of worms, I'll say. So yeah, this is the back of the property. And this, when I was saying we were trying to do things that are architecturally different or just like unique properties. Like this one has, 40 feet of glass spanning across the back. The entire back of the property is glass. The middle section there is 11 feet high. It's all structural glass.
Yeah, we just want to do things that are exciting to us, first and foremost, but we'll kind of stand the test of time too. Kind of like timeless pieces that can be enjoyed for years to come.
Yeah, so these are just some renderings. We're honestly at foundation stage right now of this one, but just it's nice to, like, we've decided for this one anyway that we're not going to pre-sell it. We're going to finish it because we want to finish it, but
Like
I
finish,
think-
so we hired a interior designer, so we want to finish it to that level and then sell it.
But as like with these renderings now that they have, like you could easily sell this house at the foundation stage because you don't have to imagine anything. You can see it exactly what it will look like. So this is another infill that we're doing in Cape Coral, Florida. We'll actually be building like 10 of this one in various parts of Florida, Cape Coral, I mean.
So that's an interesting question. I mean, you know, you were looking for friendly development areas. London is not it. Stratford looked like it was developer friendly. And then you've made this crazy jump to a state far, far away called Florida. So how did that happen?
Well, we saw an opportunity there. We went down and rented a place and kind of got the lay of the land. Really liked the area, but Cape Coral specifically saw a huge opportunity to build there. Just the cost to build, cost of the land,
high demand,
and just the majority of the homes there are, in our opinion, kind of boring. So we wanted to spice it up a bit. We kind of played it a little bit safe with this one for our first one, but I think there'll be a huge appetite for something like this down there. It's a little bit different, but still safe.
Now, did this come from a recommendation, or were you just doing, you know, looking for markets that were of potential interest?
So we moved to Sarasota we were down there for 4 months.
Yeah.
And then kind of like we're touring around different parts of Florida. And we just found that there was more opportunity here. The
other thing with these ones too, exit strategy wise, you can sell, you can vacation rental it and still cash flow, which is kind of nice. You could probably upon completion and refinance, you would have very little money left in the property as well. So that was one of the reasons we chose this market too, is the multiple exit strategies.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And then we can still do what we love to do, but then you can either sell, keep, you could partner, lots of options.
Okay, I just want to remind people that if you have questions, do put them in the Q&A. We'll address them later. But in the context of this specific project, I think Najpal has a relevant question. We should be talking a little bit about how land development gets funded. And I think we should talk about that in the context of what Darcy does, because he's done quite a lot in that way. And it'd be wonderful to understand how he funds the land development project. But before we do that, maybe in the context of what you're doing in Florida, Jake and Paula, you might want to talk about how you funded a Florida-based project.
So we have one project in Florida currently, and it wasn't a new construction. So we haven't started this one yet. We haven't bought the land yet. So as far as that, I know how I'm going to do it, but I can't speak to like whether it's going to work or not. But the one we did now is an existing home that we're renovating. We use a US based lender. We had 80% LTV plus the reno is what they funded. And then upon completion of that, we refinance out, if that makes sense.
And basically it really does come down to relationships. So like this lender that we've worked with already, they do fund new construction, but we wanted to make sure like we did send them like our experience and stuff here, and they did, take that into account when they lent to us for our current project. But they do fund new construction, but we want to, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I don't want to go and buy, 10 lots and then, not be able to fund them. So we want to prove ourselves, and then with that relationship, expand.
Yeah. So to speak to our first one that we'll do, will likely be a combination of private money and construction financing.
Not to mention land is not very expensive there. So
true.
You can buy land cash, and then if you had to, it's not terribly expensive, especially if you have equity or a line of credit or something in Canada. You can definitely fund the land, I would say fairly easily.
Yeah, we'll fire through these last few slides, and
I don't think there's very many left.
Then Darcy can speak about it. So
this is one that we're doing in Lambeth, which is just outside of London. And then this is another one in Stratford. This is actually a semi. We try to design it in a way that you couldn't necessarily tell that it was two houses. Obviously we like the modern decor,
Mhm.
and that's it.
Well, you didn't put the other
That's,
ones in, eh?
well,
Well,
no,
You ran out of time.
yeah.
They're beautiful designs. I love what you guys are doing. I want to buy them all.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
They'll be for sale soon. I'll hold you to that.
Awesome. So Darcy, I think the question of how do you finance land development deals and what are some of the methods, practices that you do? I know there's a lot of different ways to get it done, but I think it helps people to understand a little bit about, because just doing a straight land acquisition, the LTVs or the loan to value on that typically is not what people are used to who have always bought single family homes. So there's got to be other techniques and some good tips. And I think if you can give some examples of what you've done, that helps sort of enables people's imagination about what they could do.
I guess, yeah. Let me just give some structure to that a little bit. So in general, when you're doing land development or new construction, lenders will lend on just buying land, for example. There's no income coming from it. So 50% loan to value, 60% loan to value is typically kind of as high as you go, just so you know. If you're doing the whole project, the bank will typically lend, they'll do 70% loan to value on the total cost of the land, the soft and the hard cost to build out. So you have to still come up with the down payment, let's say 25 to 30%, just like you have to do with rentals or flips. The difference is your money has to go in first. So typically the trigger for the bank saying, okay, we're going to start giving you money on your construction draws is the actual getting the permit approved by city council. Up till then, you have to self-fund. So a good way to do it is as we've already just talked about, is if you can buy the land 100%, then that'll probably take you over the 25% threshold. So as soon as you get your permits, you can start dipping into the bank's money. If you have to buy the land 50% down, 50% mortgage, then by the time you get your application approved, you're probably going to have to kick in some more money. So there's still this kind of cash requirement that's really no different from any other form of investing. That's always the big question. How do I find stuff and how do I fund it? That's basically the same with any strategy. And then that, as we've said, is who you know. So not in terms of who you know, but in terms of having relationships, right? So you're kind of always cultivating some cash investors all the way through once you've kind of run out of your own money. So, but that's how this works, is that you've got to get to that 25 or 30% self-funding before the bank will start lending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's also variations of that as well, such as like we're making an assumption that it's raw land that we're not doing anything with. There's obviously the situation where you may be able to generate income off that land while you're going through the development process. So it could be something as simple as you may have a small multifamily building or even a single family home that you're renting while you're working on upzoning and etc. So
and a couple other twists on that is, as we've already talked about, if you got excess land, sever that, and then helps you to self-fund the rest. Other ways to do it is can you get an appraisal that says, well, here's what it's worth now, but once we're done it, it's going to be this. Is there a lift there? Sometimes if you're in upswing in a market, by the time you've kind of gone through the several months of the application, the land itself just has risen just because of the economy. So that they will use that as part of the funding process. The banks will take that into account as well. It doesn't work so well on the downside, obviously, but if you're in the right part of the economy, you can work that in as well.
Yep, and I think one other potential hack, if you will, in this is, and it's commonly done on large scale developments, whereas instead of getting a money partner to go buy the land, you might actually bring the landowner in as the partner, and then your piece of it is actually to do the redevelopment piece or the land development and change the entitlements and potentially even build. And
even some of the same strategies, agreements for sale, options to purchase, that was one of the things we talk about in the course, is how to acquire it. And yeah, if you can get the seller on board, huge bonus. Doesn't always, depends on the economy. If you have a really hot economy, it's tougher to do, but again, yeah, definitely.
That's awesome. So Elizabeth prepared me with a couple of good questions here, so I'm going to turn to some of her questions here. Okay, this is a good one. So, okay, we'll start with Jake and Paula, and then we'll have Darcy answer this question. So I'll just read her question, which is, looking back, what do you wish you knew when you started transitioning from your original strategies and investment models to this new, new builds and land development side of things?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones looking back for us was when we decided to get into new construction here in Ontario. We knew we had to do the Tartan certification, HCRA licensing, but that whole process was challenging. We were kind of left. We felt like
it wasn't straightforward.
Yeah, we're kind of left in the dark about the whole process and what's required, and then once you're done, what are the requirements? Not to keep your license, but requirement to build. Just kind of left in the dark for the whole time until you kind of get through.
Basically, so there's 7 courses that you have to take in order to be able to apply for your license. So they let you get through the 7 courses, which is funny enough because the school is actually in Alberta for the Ontario-based license. But anyway, so yeah, you get through all those processes and you're like, okay, I'm done. Like, can I build a house now? And then it's like, oh no, like you're not even close at that point. But there's nothing up front, I guess, saying like, here are the steps involved, to get your Tartan license. So
yeah, there's
every
like
time we thought we
financials.
were done, it was like, oh gosh, there's more. Oh, there's more. Oh, there's more. Ended up taking, I don't even know how long it took us. It took a while because we didn't understand the entire process. And you really can't find the entire process like online or anywhere. Thankfully for us, we had a good friend who was literally just like 2 steps ahead of us. So we were pestering him a lot, being like, what's next? What's next? And then, we got our certification in the mail. We're like, yes, we got it. And we still weren't done. There was like a whole other thing that we had to do. One of the big things was, as a new builder in Ontario, you have to provide security for every build, and it's $30,000. And so basically we have to pay Tartan or put in a GIC $30,000 for each new build that we do. So, and you also have to get approved for a number of builds that you want to do in a year, which we didn't know ahead of time.
Yeah, so that was a little bit challenging, as a new business. We were approved for 8 builds, so that's 240,000. That's just kind of there, and it stays with the home for 2 years from occupancy. So just things like that.
And over time, again, it all comes down to, like experience and whatever. It will come down. It won't be 30 grand for every build, but it does make it hard for, a new business and a new builder to really scale your business when you have to leave $30,000 in every single project.
Yeah. And then like obviously developmental fees are paid upfront, pre-ordering things is paid upfront.
Not to mention, it's just going to add to the cost of the end buyer, like it's just adding to the cost. It's just making housing that much more unaffordable. Like over time, with our experience and stuff like that, we will be able to get a bond as opposed to actually forking out $30,000 cash for each build. But just starting out, that's one of the things that
the Tartan process was frustrating. And then another challenge would just be, for each build, the amount of capital that's required before you get your first construction draw, which for us is after foundations in, but there's so many expenses that go out the door before you get to that point.
Yeah, like especially with the supply chain stuff, like, we're ordering like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of windows, but we haven't even broken ground yet. Yeah. So it does take a lot of capital up front. And again, when it comes to raising capital, for us, it's relationships. We have worked with people in the past when we were doing our flips or like other projects or BRRRRs. And, it basically comes down to those relationships in order to help us continue to go. Another thing, I know Darcy doesn't have this because he invests in the right municipalities, but the time it takes, like we've bought projects that are zoned for this, and then you go to do it and they're like, oh, no. Like you
just
can't
the site plan approval process, all that stuff is, that was one thing that I didn't realize when we first started out, not that we're that far in yet, but I'm not a patient guy. So the amount of time it takes and the amount of like BS, really, to be honest with you, that you have to go through just to get a permitted site, right? It's just it's frustrating, and it takes a lot of time and costs a lot of money to hold that, right? So
But at the same time, if it was easy, then, everyone would do it.
yeah,
So
true.
like yes, there are obstacles. Yes, it's challenging. And yes, I wish it would go faster and cost less money. But at the same time, I think these obstacles is kind of, well, they're building character for us
For
for
sure.
sure.
Like,
And we're learning on every single one. But if it was straightforward and easy for everyone to do, then more people would do it. There'd be more competition and
yeah, on
less
the
stress.
development side of things, we've taken our bumps in the last little bit since we started. So you're learning something every day, and going forward, you're just that much more confident and stronger to take on projects. Like, yeah, some of the projects we took on maybe a year ago, I would
Maybe
maybe second guess it, right? Like the profit's just not there. The amount of time to get permits it's just like you do all this work, you raise all this money for, maybe the profit's not really worth it if you were to reanalyze it. So
Well, thankfully, real estate is a very forgiving thing, right?
it is. Yeah, especially the last year. Ooh,
Yeah.
very forgiving. Yeah.
If you make mistakes, generally speaking, you can climb your way out of a
Yep.
hole compared to
Correct
other
it. Yeah,
things.
there's always ways for sure.
And there's always options, right? Like well, for us, when we buy, we buy with, multiple exit strategies in mind. We're not just buying for like one single purpose. Some of our new builds, they're a little trickier because they
Yeah.
are, but we could mitigate those by pre-selling them, but we're just choosing not to right now.
And that's the way condo developers raise a lot of their capital, is by pre-selling their units before they even start putting a shovel in the ground.
Yeah. One more thing too, just as far as the new, sorry, so I cut you off there. So I was just gonna say the new construction stuff, it is easier to get funding and with better rates and terms if it is
If you
pre-sold.
sell it ahead of time.
Doesn't.
Like I guess it's more my perspective is like, I know what this is going to look like when it's done and you walk through it in real life and you get that emotional, you get someone to buy it based on their emotions, on how they feel when they see, like the furniture in there and everything in there. And I do think that you could demand more when it's at that point. So, I mean, it'll be a little bit of, I guess, trial and hopefully not error to see if that was the right choice or not. If, maybe we could have sold it before and had less financing costs and whatever, but we're going to try it this way. And if we have to pivot in the future, we'll pivot. So.
Yeah, and I'm just going to pick up on something James Rukundo just put in the comments, which is being a builder doesn't sound like fun anymore. And
Yeah.
I think it depends. So there's kind of two angles to that. Part of it is what you love doing, right, in terms of the creative process. And I think Paula and Jake, with even some of the challenges that you've had, it sounds like it's a bit of a passion and you get a lot of energy out of creating new, unique product out there. But if we take a look at it purely from an overall investment model and choices that can be made, something like land development can be relatively low risk, but construction is actually one of the higher risk areas that exist because you've got smaller margins typically that you're dealing with on that side. So that's why a lot of land developers like to get it to a point of the final entitlements, but then they like to sell it to a developer who will then take it from there and is an expert in actually creating that piece. So Darcy, just moving to you, and the same question. Looking back, what do you wish you knew before you started going into land development?
Going back to my depression stuff where I didn't want to do the site supervision anymore. So figure out who you are first before you kind of pick a strategy. We're kind of always pressured to pick a strategy first, and typically that's flips or rentals. So figure out who you are first. But then a way to mitigate some of the issues that Jake and Paula were talking about is, again, the micro strategies. Maybe you don't continue on and physically do the actual construction piece, or even investing in, for certain parts of Ontario, for example, maybe turn the negative into a positive. Builders want to build. They don't want to deal with the crap with City Hall, right? So if it's going to take a year to get permits, that's a value add for somebody that wants to do that, right? So maybe you as an investor can fight the fight for a year, you get everything you want, and then, as you say, then you hand off a package to a builder, and there's an uplift there for doing that work. In a municipality where the lift is, or the time is shorter, let's say you're in a place where it only does take 2 months, what's the value to a builder to sit there and pay you a lot of money for doing the paperwork? They can just call their own planner or civil engineer and say, I bought this land, make it work for me. the positive there, the add there is to physically do the build, because now it's easier to kind of step in and just get right shovel ready and go to build. So kind of pick and choose where you're at, and then turn the negatives into positives if you can. One of the things I did was I called myself a full-time real estate investor for 20 years, and all I was really doing was buying myself a job for the next 6 months, with the flips or the rentals or the new construction. Basically, if you're there all day, every day, that's a job. That's not an investment. I think most of the people tuning in now are looking at it from an investment standpoint. Again, lift yourself up, do the part that's the investment. And if you're going to do the build, hire a builder. Don't go through and kind of get your own Ontario license, because it's not worth it, as you guys are probably finding out, unless that's really where your passion lies. It's not worth it. So that's part of your team is a builder. Or if you're just doing the raw land development, there's going to be your civil engineer or somebody that's going to be the on-site super that's physically putting the pipe in the ground. Focus on the parts that make you money, which is finding the next property or putting the deal together, finding financing, whatever. So play to your strengths, I guess, is the biggest thing I could say.
Okay, so what I'd like to do now, because it's 7 minutes past the hour, right? So I wanted to give a little bit of time for our Q&A, and if we have time, I have a few more questions, but I want to give a chance for our participants to ask some of the hard questions. And thankfully, again, if you have any additional questions, please put them in the Q&A. We've got quite a few already, which is awesome. So question here. And I'll give this one to you, Darcy. So James Rukundo from Ottawa asked the question, what criteria do you look for when searching for a great municipality to work in?
Basically, I would go online and see, is there precedent? Is there other new development? Is there other, modern buildings being built, are there duplexes and fourplexes, or is it still just, the entire community is still single family homes from 1956, right? So if it is, then the NIMBY crowd is really strong. You're looking for places, communities where, okay, yeah, every second house is a new build kind of thing. And then now I know I can do something there.
Okay, so Jake, Paula, do you have anything to add to that?
Sorry. Just trying to read the question again. Lost my attention span again.
No, it's okay. So, how do you select a good municipality to work in?
So we've done it through trial and error, but there's always ways. Yeah. Speak to other people that are doing it. Networking always fun, and you can learn lots. So just reach out to people that are doing it and just get a feel before you try. You can always. I know it's tough in this market, especially if you're buying on MLS. I mean, you got to kind of, it's a little slower now, but speak with the municipality and say, like, even just do an example, be like, even if you don't own the property, say, I got this property. What would you guys say if I did this? And just get a feel for that. That's what I would say.
Yeah, maybe talk to other land developers in the area. So like, how hard a time is it? Do you find it pretty easy, or is it a tough slog?
Even you can reach out to like an urban planner and see what they think. Like, that's kind of how we got our start. We're like, we reached out to one and be like, well, what do you think of this? Like, not one that's involved with the city. And
A private planner.
yeah, and they kind of will be like, this normally doesn't fly. And then you can be like, okay, well, it's normally not going to fly, then I'm not going to touch it, right? If it's something that seems like, yes, that should go through, okay, well, then we can pursue it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's, and I think the other thing I'll plug there is, this is why going to networking events is so important, right? Because you gain a lot of information from people who have done work in areas that you were considering before. So you can certainly learn from that. So Jake and Paula, I've got a question for you from, I believe it's pronounced either Giri or Giri. How do we do a high level costing? Okay, so I think they're looking at construction.
Yeah.
I know there are many variables, but just to understand what will be the cost of building a rental property.
So yeah, tons of variables. And it'll depend on who you talk to too, right? Some people will say 300 a square, but bare bones, like, this is doing it yourself, not like hiring a builder. You could do it for 200 a square foot in Ontario for sure.
I find the cost per square foot.
It's a challenging way to gauge too, right? Because everything's different, but like, if you want to just take the price it costs to build and divide it by the square footage, you should be able to do it for around 200 if you're doing it yourself and you're getting quotes for everything and
But
in
that
way,
could
so-
change like drastically, even if you just said, like, if you picked a, you know, a flooring, instead of you're supposed to pick a flooring that's $3 a square foot and you pick one that's $8 a square foot and you have now $5 times a 6,000 square foot building, like, and that's just one component. So like how quickly you can, you know, change.
tons of variables like roof pitch, that's going to cost you more. Like, it's just like there's cheaper ways to build for sure. So if you learn those methods, you can definitely keep the cost down. I know someone that built sixplex for around 160 a square foot, so it can be done. I'm not there yet at that price, but it can be done. But you can go all the way up. Like the one we're doing now is like, I don't even know how much. It's probably over 400 a square foot. So you start incorporating the flat roof, glass, ACM panels, all that stuff. The cost really goes up. And then when you're in that certain price range, then they expect the finishes to be high end as
And
well.
better
So,
appliances and all that stuff. So just,
but yeah, short answer, I would say if you're doing it yourself, 200 to 220 square foot, you should be able to do it for. If you're hiring out, it's going to be a lot more.
Okay. Darcy, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, that's something we teach in the course, but anyway, you got to watch that price per square foot because it is different on type of build. Like a bungalow is different than a multifamily, or even like a sixplex, because the roof size and all that. Finishing fixture quality is a big deal. That's where, and then if you are working with a builder, make sure you're agreeing on that and really understand apples to apples, what they think they're quoting versus what you think the quality is going to be. And then again, location matters. Cost of the city. I read somewhere recently that the cost, 50% of the cost of a new build in Vancouver is city fees too, right? So that adds a lot to it as well. Just real quick, if you're tearing down an old house and building like a fourplex in Calgary, for example, the fee from the city is $100 per unit, so $400. Take that to certain places in Ontario, for example, where it's $12,000 per unit, or I think it's Kitchener, I want to say, where it's $60,000 per unit. So it's a big deal to be in the right place. So
Yeah,
big
absolutely. And the other thing people need to understand too is the kinds of costing we're talking about. It assumes that we're acting as the general contractor and hiring all the various trades, etc. What's typically done on large scale developments is you've got the development company, if you will, but then you'll hire a builder, and the builder will be part of your pricing process in terms of figuring out what it's going to be. And then usually you'll negotiate in something like a guaranteed maximum price or a GMP as well. So there's different ways to do this, and it all amounts to getting the experts around you as well to help you with this. I know I GC my own stuff, but I'll get each of the major subs in my trades to be reviewing the plans and the costing that we do. And in terms of the rules of thumb, both Darcy and Jake hit it straight on. Depending on your finishings, density, it can be all over the map. So,
and don't just one last thing.
Sure.
Get a professional to double check your numbers. Don't go off back a napkin, because we all tend to be biased that we think we can do it for better and cheaper and faster than probably we can. So yeah, I found that I was always bad at that. So.
It sounds like school of hard knocks on that one, Darcy. Yeah. So, okay, there was a couple questions on financing, but I think we've kind of answered them already. So the funding for the Cape Coral project, I think you answered that already, Jake. How does funding work for land development in Ontario? I think, Darcy, you talked about that earlier sufficiently. Let's see, just going through this.
That's consistent all over how that works. So,
yeah. So Darcy, what might be nice, because someone here is asking, it's Scott Raridan actually. So Scott's asking, can you run through numbers on one of these deals, particularly on a land assembly? If either of you have a good example, and Darcy, you've done a lot of different types of land development, so maybe you can run through some very high level numbers on that.
Can I share my screen for 2 seconds?
Yeah, go for it.
So are we all seeing that? This is one of the very, very first ones I do. So this is kind of actually something that can be done by most people just starting out. So before and after, obviously. So before I owned the picture up in the upper left, the one house behind the trees, I was going to just do that as a flip. The guy next to me passed away. So I bought his off the son as well. So now I own the two. I moved off the units. So it's usually about $8,000 per house, let's say, to demolish a house and get it taken away. In this case, I actually had a house mover come to me and buy them off me. So that helped. I then subdivided the two properties into 4, serviced the 2 new properties. The other old lots were serviced already. So I could have sold it them as a pure land development play. Instead, I decided to build it. And I built the 2 single family homes on the outside and a duplex in the middle. So again, costs vary, but if you can partner with the seller, that brings the cost down. Typically to let's say, to dig a trench into the middle of the street and tap into the city's main water, natural gas, that kind of thing, depending on where you are, it's probably 15 to 30,000 to do that across the country, plus throw in another, let's say $5,000 to $10,000 for engineering. So I always say it's roughly about $40,000 to $50,000 per new lot to kind of do that. No construction of the house. I'm forgetting about the house for now. So just the land development piece, you're probably looking at that. Again, big swing across the country, but probably 40,000 to 50,000 at a high end on that before you can actually get in the ground and start building. So. Okay. But that's actually something that's doable. Like you wouldn't need 2. You could just have the one house and like I said, knock down the old house and sever it and create 2.
So what did the numbers work out to in terms of your purchase price, capital invested, and eventual sale price and profit? If you don't want to share that, that's okay too.
No, so. That's fine. This was my first one, so I have to remember this was like 2004. I had financing in place. I bought the house as a flip, so typical flip numbers, and so I think it was like 75% loan to value, 25% down. And then I was able to buy the next one using my own line of credit. It's kind of the same idea. Now I had a large portion. I'd basically already done that, as we talked about, the 25%, 75% loan to value on a new construction. I basically already had that in place because I had these 2 as flips. So then I was able to qualify for kind of a new construction loan based on that, because I already had a lot of equity in the project. So going back in time, it's not even really comparable, because these were like 250,000 to buy back in the day each, kind of thing, right? So it's not really comparable. Typically, the profit was typically, it's like 15%, 18% of the final finished product is kind of what I'm looking for. So I was these guys at the end, they sold for 500,000 times 4 with the house thing. So I made about, I want to say $70,000 per unit kind of profit, kind of thing. That's what I want to say.
So Jake and Paula, on your side, is there an example you'd like to share?
We're kind of in this on the new builds, we're looking at around 12% profit margin. That's kind of what we're looking at. I can share like rough numbers on one that we're working on now. Rough is it's not done yet, so I don't know, but this is kind of the projected values. One sec here. So we bought a property.
Share the screen.
Not screen, I'll just run to it.
Oh, okay.
We bought a property, bought it based on the zoning. It was a single family home that allowed for 5 units. So we paid $685 for that. We're still in the permitting process, but paid $685 based on I think it was a 4.7 cap, 4.75% cap rate. When we're done, it'll be worth 2.7 million. So what we're doing is we're adding an addition, and we'll have the 5 units. So we're adding square footage. I have rehab costs at $1 million. So with carrying, we're probably around just under 2 million in. So there's like an 800K spread on this one.
Okay.
So we should be able to, on refinance, we should be able to pull a little bit of money out, depending if we what LTV we get on that. So
Right. Yeah. And so on a related note, I mean, yeah, you've stated some numbers that are fairly large, right? And I'm sure some people are wondering, okay, well, where do I find $2 million?
Yep.
So curious, how did you guys do it?
So acquisition was private. We got 90% LTV. There's a first and a second on it. We'll do a takeout on that and do construction finance based on the end value of the project. So there'll be some money that we'll have to come up with, you know, carrying, pre-order, all that stuff. But we'll get it to funding through draws on that.
All right. Yeah, and with this funny interest rate environment as well, you're refinancing. For the smaller stuff, it shouldn't be too bad. But if you're doing commercial stuff, it can be a little hairier at the moment because a refi may not get your loan to value quite where you hoped.
Yeah, we had one of those recently.
Yeah, we don't generally get, like, we never get 80%, but at the same time, if we get less, it's more cash flow. So it's,
yeah,
it is what it is.
Yin and yang, it works together.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. I want to go to a different one, and I'm going to give Darcy a chance to answer Richard Wepler's question, which is, where do you market land development deals? So if you brought it to a certain point, how do you market it to sell it to somebody?
You gotta know who your end user is. So typically, if you're just doing the land development piece, then your purchaser is a builder, right? It can be in certain spots where you're selling it to the end user, and then they're going to go find a builder to build for them. So basically, know who your end user is. And then if you're doing this on a regular basis, then get to know local builders, get to know a realtor in your area that specializes in this kind of stuff. And there's not a lot of those. So that's kind of a challenge too. But if you're doing it on a regular basis, you might even want to kind of join the local builders association or the local land developers association, and then just start going to meetups, start going to meetings, and figure out, you know, who is the type of person that's going to be interested in building what I want to do. Like, for example, if you're tearing down an old house and just building one new really nice house, like Jake and Paula are doing, different builder for that than if you're tearing down an old house building a sixplex, different from knocking down an old house building a 13 unit multifamily, right? So know your market, know who your end user is.
Yeah, and it's a really good point, because you said it earlier, Darcy, which is builders like to build. They don't really like to do the land development piece because they like to keep their guys busy, right? And going. And so they just do the construction over and over and over again. So it's very much about developing the relationship, as Darcy was saying, with people who just want to build stuff, and they've got an input funnel. They just want to be able to pick up entitled land. And
certain, just adding on, sorry about that. A lot of builders will actually partner with you, right? Like if you find a builder that actually, maybe they have investors as well, and they're looking for land that's already, the paperwork's already in place, it's shovel ready, and use that as maybe a potential form of financing as well, or to speed things up. So those kind of relationships help too.
Wonderful. Did you want to add anything to that, Jake or Paula?
No, that's good.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Okay. So there's just a few questions left here. Okay. So James is asking a question that's interesting, and it really comes down to risk management. So when you're doing a project, you've got a business case in mind, you have expectations of the outcome. How do you adjust for the changes that happen in the market, or how do you mitigate that risk or anticipate it? You know, the example he's giving is, how do you adjust or pivot in land development with the new expected rates? And he's talking about interest rates coming up. But it can also be other things besides interest rates, like, you know, housing valuations can change, etc. Recessions can kick in, that kind of stuff. So how do you plan for that risk in your project? Let's start with Jake and Paula, and then we can turn that back to Darcy.
Yeah, that's a good question. And obviously, we don't have as much experience as you guys do, but I think, you know, there's going to be some things that you can't control, and that's going to be interest rates, valuation, but you want to make sure the project is profitable, not on a small scale, but on a large scale. You want to know, so if interest rates are 4.5 now, what's this project look like if they're 7, 6.5? What am I going to do if my valuation comes in $200,000 less? What does the cash flow look like? All that sort of thing. Obviously, this is if you're keeping it. Rental market rents too. That's another thing you can't control. They could fall, they could rise. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what Darcy says. But I know the one thing we learned early on was there's got to be a lot of meat on the bone, right? Or it's too risky, right? So
yeah, don't overpay.
yeah. Aside from that, I mean, you could get scared about the what ifs, but there comes a point where you have to make it an informed decision and either go forward or not go forward.
Yeah, Darcy.
This is what I live my life by now, in and out quick. So the less you're in, the better. So that, I did a large development, 7 acres, 36 units. And I did it was raw land. So I took it, got all the permitting in place. I did up zoning, changed the zoning and density. I did the land development. Then I went and built the whole thing. And I got caught in the middle of one of the recessions here. So you're scrambling, right? So pick a lane, you're developer, you're builder, you're just doing the micro strategies, in and out quick, use the micro strategies. Jake and Paula said this before, multiple exit strategies, different ways to do it. Some perspective though is that I bought my first house in 87 at 12.5% interest rate. So typically through the 90s, the 2000s, the 1970s, 5 to 8% interest is kind of normal, right? So we're kind of maybe just getting back to historical norms, but people still make money at 7% interest.
So a couple of quick takes just to wrap up our questions here, right? So don't belabor the point. So just get to it. Okay, Darcy, what are some of the friendlier municipalities in Southwestern Ontario, if you know?
I don't know off the top of my head. We're actually in the group, in the Facebook group that we put together for the course. We're actually building a database of that all across the country. So typically you're better off. There's an extra layer of municipality stuff in Ontario that doesn't necessarily exist anywhere else. There's more of a reach for environmental stuff. Like you've got some extra stuff there that doesn't exist, let's say in Western Canada or in rural British Columbia, for example. Like, so Victoria's bad, Vancouver's bad, but Cranbrook, some of these other places aren't bad. A lot of places in the Maritimes are pretty good. So just in general, Ontario is a little bit tougher because there's an extra layer of lots and lots of years of NDPs and Liberals.
Okay, Paula, Stratford was one that you definitely seem
Yeah.
So we're kind of based London and surrounding area. Haven't had a lot of fun in London so far. Stratford's been great. North Middlesex, which is north of London, has been great. St. Thomas is good. Strathroy's been good. It's in Middlesex County too.
And like basically anywhere just really around London. And maybe it's just because we had such a hard time in London that it feels like a big breath of fresh air being outside and having people work with you and want to help you. So we've had good success with like small communities around London, but a small community doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be easy either. So not to confuse
but
the
I think
two. But
Darcy's idea of getting a list of development friendly municipalities is a great idea. You should share that with your buddy Jake.
Okay, quick one, Darcy, from James. Which financial lenders do you find to be pro land development, if you could pick a couple?
Here, I'm going to answer that this way. I would strongly recommend that you get a mortgage broker that specializes in this stuff, because the players are different, right? So there's fewer lenders that'll lend on this stuff. There's fewer equity partners that'll be the JV partners on this, right? So you need to get a really strong mortgage broker that knows the players. The old saying, you can't tell the players without a program. So that's kind of how I'd go about it, is really lean on that. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. With rentals and flips here, it's really important to get a real guy that knows that. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'd like to do is wrap up the formal part of this, and if there's any remaining questions, we can do that after, if you guys have time. So let me just put this up here. So as regular listeners to Elizabeth's webinars and podcasts, you know that she likes to give stuff away. And so today's gift for a lucky attendee is a book written by Quentin D'Souza on Action Takers Real Estate Investment Planner. And Quentin writes quite a few interesting books for sure. So I'm going to ask Paula to pick a number from 1 to 55, right? And that person will be the lucky one. Mary Beth will follow up with that person tomorrow to let them know.
Okay, I picked number 37.
37. Okay, I've marked it down. Perfect. And in case we need a backup, Darcy?
27.
27. Okay. It's a definite sevens kind of day. So this ends the formal part of our discussion tonight, and I thank everybody for attending. Thank you very much. My name is Christian Szpilfogel, and we had on here Jake and Paula, as well as Darcy, who've given us some incredible, valuable insights in the world of land development and to some degree construction and development. So thank you very much, all of you. And the summer, Elizabeth is taking the rest of the summer off. She's going to be working on a summit. I believe she's launching that in September. So stay tuned, people, for information related to that. They'll be coming up. But in terms of webinars this summer, you have the summer off, at least as Elizabeth is concerned. So again, thank you very much.